Welcome to another episode of First Word in Sport. How are you on this sunny Friday morning, James?
Yeah, morning, Luke. Morning, everyone. Yeah, good to see a bit of sun. Bit battered and bruised, actually. Went to see my osteopath yesterday about my back. Yeah, feel like I've done a lot of boxing to see how bad my back is. Talking of
Getting old, James. Getting
sports
old.
and yeah, getting old. Talking of that, did you see that article on the BBC in the week about the doping? About how many athletes have spoken anonymously to people in the authorities in 2025? Do you see how many number it was?
The whistleblowers, yeah,
The whistleblowers, yeah.
It's a problem, and it's probably worthy of a longer conversation at another time. But sports definitely has a problem with drugs.
Yeah, it was 185 reports of suspected doping to UK National Anti-Doping Organisation in 2025. That's a lot.
But I think they have. I'm not surprised because if you need, we always used to have conversations about bold and everything, and it's very simple. You have to almost do these things if other people are doing it to be competitive.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, you get left behind.
I would say.
See what that...
What I would say just quickly, one of the best documentaries on TV was Icarus, when it's talking about Russian doping. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's well worth watching.
Yeah, it is very good. It'd be interesting to see that enhanced games that is taking place either this summer, I think it is. See what that's like.
Right, let's crack on talking about football. Just quickly, James, big event of the week is my eldest daughter potentially is playing against her old school today at football, and she's particularly excited, although it may become a victim of the weather. So we shall see. Let's talk about Carabao Cup. It was an interesting week in as much as everything was dominated again by refereeing, VAR. It's, we should almost just have a segment every week just talking about VAR and refereeing. One of the things we've touched on, and I sort of come back to it time and time again with the whole situation, is I think we're both broadly aligned in that I think there should be VAR. I'm not, a number of people I've seen this week in social media, in the media, saying, "Oh, how nice it was for the FA Cup," and not to have VAR, and it's like football back in the old days, and and everything else. I always think, you tell me, you want VAR or not?
Point one, VAR is here to stay. They're not going to get rid of it. So people talking about getting rid of it, it's not going to happen. Yes, broadly I am with VAR. You can't have it without it, unfortunately. It's too quick, the game, and it's too important when there are bad decisions being made. The problem with VAR is the people running it. The idiots and the clowns who are running it. The PGMOL. Talked about it before. They should have specialists doing it. You can't have a referee who is refereeing a Premier League game or a Championship game or whatever game of football on a Saturday afternoon. Say he's refereeing Newcastle versus Tottenham at 12:30 on a Saturday afternoon, and then at 4:30 he's doing the VAR game from Man United, Man City, from Stockley Park. So he's travelling all that distance, and he's done the game. It's a completely different job spec, in my view. It's just the clowns running it. They don't understand the game. They don't like it anyway. Just get better people to run it. You can't not have it when certain decisions are very easy to spot, and it works, like bad tackles or offsides and things like that. It's the dubious ones, and we saw in the week, especially the Man City game up at Newcastle, where the thing called subjected offside was given. That needs to be taken out. It's the laws that need changing, not VAR.
Okay, so I sort of look at it. So I think one of the big problems of VAR is a communication piece. Okay, so one of the big sort of takeaways from the Manchester City game was that how long it obviously took to make that decision for the second Semenyo goal. And there's a couple of issues around that decision. Okay, firstly is how long it took. So it took almost 5.5 minutes to make that decision. Okay, and the second piece is communication around the whole situation, and then thirdly, it's, as you say, the subjective aspect. So if you look at the communication around it, is what I find staggering a little bit is how few people understand what the offside rule is. And I still see so many people commenting on that as if they think that it wasn't offside originally. They don't appreciate that Pope is, in play as such, and is clearly not. He's clearly in an offside position. Haaland. There aren't effectively two players behind him.
Yeah, he's offside. Yeah.
But so the communication problem is that, and what I don't really understand is why it took so long for them to declare Haaland offside. You could see he was offside within about 10 seconds in terms of from the photos and the footage we had. Okay, at that point, so that's the first issue, is a communication issue. So that has to communicate so much better. Huh?
Can I just jump in there? So I tend not to listen to games with commentary on just because they wind me up, the commentators and the pundits alike. So I turned it on when I saw the goal going in, just to see, because as you say, you can see it pretty clearly. Haaland is offside, kind of thing. There's no debate. The commentators, I was watching on ITV. I know it was on Sky here in the UK as well. They didn't appreciate Haaland was offside. That was the scary thought. They didn't realise he was offside to start with. And that's where the issue lies with fans, that they're giving false information out. Like, ridiculous. I don't know what it was like on Sky with Chris Sutton. And
no, I was watching on ITV, but it is that communication piece. So if you told fans that that was a situation, that actually you're not looking at the defenders, the goalkeeper is a factor in this, everyone would go, okay, so that's the right decision in terms of offside. It's just incredible how many people were still posting stuff about that decision, that aspect of the decision, so long afterwards. Okay. And then, so obviously you have a communication piece, and then you obviously have the sort of subjectivity. Okay. The problem with subjectivity, as always, is inconsistency. And whenever you have these decisions where you're giving off, players interfering with goalkeepers or defenders, and you make decisions like the decision they made to disallow that goal, you're opening a can of worms. And it's exactly what's happened. And it's ironic that less than 24 hours later, we obviously had the situation in the Arsenal game, which was, in my eyes, was probably even more of a interference than the actual one against Newcastle. And so what you have is you have two games there where two goals have been scored, almost identical situations. One's been given offside, one hasn't. And, it's little wonder the fans are in uproar.
Yeah. But going back to, go to the City Newcastle City game, sorry. So two things I like from VAR is, why can't we hear the conversation between VAR and the referee at all times, like in other sports, like the communications, you say, communicate to the fans. Now, whether that's harder for the people inside the stadium, but certainly on TV, there's no excuse why you can't have the communication between the referee and the VAR and the studio. We should just hear all of it. And I reckon, by the way,
I'll tell you why they don't do it. It's because they don't back themselves in terms of the information that they're giving out.
Yeah. And secondly, I just don't get why, in that situation, the referee, why is he standing in the middle of the pitch listening on an earpiece? Why doesn't he just go and look at the monitor straight away? Clearly, the game stopped anyway because it's a goal. So it's going to be a restart of some description, any really with any VAR. So why just not go and look at it there and then and have a conversation, rather waiting for the VAR official to talk to his mates and then say to the referee, actually, then you need to come and have a look at it. So that could speed up the process by a minute, minute and a half.
Where's the drama in that, James?
What? I just don't get it. Bar from cricket, I understand, because you're out in the middle and it's 150 yards to go and watch the screen. Rugby union, rugby league, they go and watch it straight away on the big screen and communicate, and it's all heard of by the fans alike, and you can see it, and they're watching it at the same time as the VAR people are doing it. NFL, they're doing the same thing. All other major sports, I just don't get it with football, why they don't go and look at it at the same time as VAR talking about it. Surely that saves time, because then they can discuss it and go, well, actually, yeah, that's fine. No, I don't believe this. But yeah, anyway. I mean, should we talk about the game in itself? I mean, I thought that Man City team, when I saw it, and I saw who's going to play the defensive midfield role with no Gonzalez because he was out injured, and no Rodri, whether they protect him. I know he came on after 60 minutes, but it felt like they just protected him, which is sensible because he just come back from another injury. Nico O'Reilly played there. He was quite impressive actually there. Like, considering he's a left winger not by trade, but you know what I mean? He's been brought up a left winger, played majority of his first team football as left back, and then he goes to play centre midfield, and the only centre midfield really, because they had Bernardo and Foden up against that Newcastle midfield away from home. That was sneakily impressive 60 minutes performance, by the way, by him. It really was. He didn't look phased, and when he stood up to Joel Linton as well, that was mighty impressive. Well, it's like, I know he's a big chap, O'Reilly. He's big and physical. He's got a great first touch. He's got a great left foot. He looks a proper player and a talent. And I up to the Linton and went, no, mate. This is my patch as well. You can't go around kicking people like you do every week. I'm here as well. He was the best player on that pitch for 60 minutes.
Very impressive. And I think what's been impressive, it's just how he's slotted in at left back. I mean, he's not competing against rubbish left backs. He's basically forced Pep to pick him there ahead of Guardiola, amongst others.
Oh, now Nuri.
And Ait-Nouri. I know Ait-Nouri started a little bit at the start of the season and got injured, but he hasn't been cited since, despite having spent a lot of money on him. I was surprised at how well City played. So one of the things because when you looked at the lineup, that spine of City did look very weak. Trafford, Aileen, Kusanov, O'Reilly. And I expected Newcastle to come flying out the blocks and to get after them, and they didn't. And I always think it's one of two things. So you obviously have ideas as to how games are likely to go, and Newcastle pressing is one of these strange ones. Sometimes it's wildly effective, and then other times it isn't wildly effective, and it's not always obvious as to why, whether it was Newcastle deliberately not coming out with the intention of pressing really hard, or whether City just didn't allow them to. Because the one thing City is so good with the ball, even without Rodri in there, which is partly why O'Reilly did such a good job, is with the way they pass the ball, they can make it so hard to effectively press them at times.
Yeah, their manipulation of the ball was pretty impressive. Well, talking to another youngster at City, Max Delane. Wow. I know he played a couple of games. He'd been on loan at Watford, and I'm sure they were pretty disappointed to lose him. He looked really composed as well. Playing left-sided centre-back, big, strong, good on the ball. He looks another talent. Yeah, City can take the sting out of games very well. I'm just curious about Newcastle because we talked about it where they played Chelsea in that Saturday morning game months or 6 weeks ago, didn't they? And they battered Chelsea, and they outran them in the first half, first 55, 60 minutes. And then they were knackered, couldn't run anymore. And as you say, I was expecting them to do it again on a Tuesday night under lights up at St James's Park, get into Newcastle, as what the older people would say, and they didn't. They couldn't get near City for a time. It was brilliant. It was a very good performance by Man City at the weekend. In midweek, sorry.
I think.
And even Holland didn't do anything.
But I would go as far to say it's one of the better City performances I've seen probably in the last 12 months in terms of the injuries they had, sort of expectations, where the match was, what was at stake. I just thought it was incredibly impressive.
I mean, Semenyo obviously started brilliantly. What I do like about Semenyo is he's two-footed. He's naturally two-footed. And as a defender, that's a nightmare. He's one of the very few people in the Premier League or in world football, actually, that can go on the inside and the outside of you, and there's a defender and a fullback, and even Gordon, who had another shocker, by the way. So then you can go either side, and he's powerful on both feet as well. So you can strike the ball well on both feet. If we saw his last goal for Bournemouth, right foot, left foot, he is. I know he's only been 2 games. Well, I don't count the first game of extra, but we know he's going to score goals, and City do need goals in that team to help Haaland. And if they're to catch Arsenal in the league, he's going to be a big player for them. But it was sneakily impressive by City on Tuesday night.
So I'd say a couple of things about Newcastle. One, obviously, Lewis Hall. I've said for a long time, I think Newcastle possibly have, and I had this opinion probably since the summer, that Newcastle possibly have the best fullbacks in the Premier League when fit, in Hall and Livramento. Obviously, they've had injuries this year. I think Hall is a pretty special talent in terms of what he can do. I'll be amazed if he stays at Newcastle for long. I think someone else will snap him up. He's too good. It makes you wonder about Chelsea in terms of how they ever let him leave. I realise there's obviously financial fair play considerations, but still, he's an unbelievable player. And then Wissa. Let's talk about Wissa. Absolute donkey. I know he's been injured. I know he's moved to a new team. But he looks absolutely terrible.
Look, way off the pace. And he looked like a park player. That first chance, by the way, I actually thought he was offside, but he did well to stay onside level with Murphy on the right-hand side. Just didn't get his feet sorted at all, did he? Looked like way out of off the pace, way out of his depth, actually. It was a lot of money at the time. 28, 29-year-old. It looked a panic buy. They didn't really need him as per se. They've got Walter Marder, and they've got that Ulrisa, the Danish young lad anyway. So, and they could play Gordon up there, could play Barnes up there, could play Langer up there. They've got enough forwards. It was a panic buy. He's a £20 million player that they spent best part of 60 on.
I think Newcastle have a problem as well. So not just Visser. Obviously, Alanga is terrible. Looks an unbelievably poor buy. I thought it was telling with Forest at the time that they were happy to show Alanga out the door quickly. And then when it came to Gibbs White, they obviously kicked up a fuss. They were very clear, I think, as a club as to who's valuable and who's not. And then Walter Marde, he's obviously scored some good goals this season, but his overall play is very, very average. And, that's why he's been dropped for Visser at various points, because his contributions outside of I know strikers are just there to score goals, really. But in the Premier League now, you need a little bit more than that. And his overall contribution isn't good. And, across those 3 players, I spent the best part of £200 million on.
No comment.
But yeah, it was an interesting game. But obviously, it was the VAR and the refereeing that. Ultimately, it didn't really make huge amounts of difference to the game or potentially the outcome, but it certainly could have.
The second leg to 4th of February, is it? I think so. The second leg to 4th of February. I think we'll come on to the Chelsea Arsenal game now. I think the second leg of the Chelsea Arsenal game is the 3rd of February, Tuesday the 3rd. Chelsea Arsenal. Chelsea obviously rested 2 key players, and Reece James and Cole Palmer. Caicedo, he is key player. Caicedo was obviously suspended, which I didn't actually realise on Monday. He's a big player for them. He's arguably their most important player. Yeah, another strange game. I think it was probably, we talked about it briefly, probably offside from the Declan Rice corner to Ben White, set piece, football club. Strike again. What was that? 23 set piece goals this season already, or something ridiculous, isn't it?
That misses the 3 they had against Portsmouth.
It's quite remarkable. If you think about it, though, is like the fine margins in top level sport and top level football means you have to go to these things like set pieces are becoming huge, corners are becoming huge, and Arsenal, they went 1-0 up, and then very quickly, sorry, that Chelsea team, that Mark guy from the Barcelona, has he won the lottery to play for Chelsea? He looks really, really bad. I know he's their third choice because Delap was ill and João Pedro played as a 10. He actually did all right, actually. He is a 10. He's not a 9. So I think Delap, when he's back 100%, he'll be back playing for them, I think. I think Rosinia likes that focal point up front. Can we talk about the best player in the park, though? The Chelsea winger, Estavio. Wow. What a performance.
I sent you a message after that game. And, it's been clear since very early on in the season that the kid is a superstar. I sent you a message. How much would Estavio cost? And your initial reaction was, he's off to Real Madrid. And I was like, well, they're going to have to sell.
I said 80 million to start with.
But if he's 80 million, then that's incredible value, because when you see all the players who've gone for 50, 60 million, like your Kuduses and Alangas and all these other players, Estavio's probably 150 million, 200 million pound player on the basis of those other players, given how young he is as well. How much upside he has. That's the one thing Chelsea have, is by signing all these youngsters, is they were going to hit upon one or two potential superstars, and in Estavio they have a potential superstar.
Yeah, I mean, the piece of skill in the second half when he stood up Timber and he just skinned Timber, just stood him up and just did this piece of skill, and he just went, "Oh, that's quite useful," like kind of thing. And he was. He looks an absolute brilliant superstar. Absolute superstar. Right.
So I'll just go back to Chelsea lineup. So I don't think James and Palmer were rested. So before that game, there was talk about Gusto, James and Palmer, and they'd originally been expected that they should be okay to play. Obviously, they've decided not to, and that's all because of injuries. So Delap was different in that he was obviously a late withdrawal because of illness, and there's a good chance he misses out this week against Brentford as well. Obviously, Caicedo was the big one missing. I do think it is a nonsense where you get suspended for, he picked up 2 yellow cards in the competition. Given how, you can get sent off in a Premier League game and then miss an FA Cup game, that type of, so Cucurella obviously got sent off against Fulham and then he misses the Charlton game. It seems a nonsense that some competitions will penalise players within that competition. So Caicedo was missing because he'd obviously picked up 2 yellow cards in that competition. I just find it weird that you have these situations where players can be sent off in one tournament and then miss games in another, and yet you have a situation like that with Caicedo. He's Chelsea's most important player at the moment. Obviously, Estavio is going to be a superstar, but Caicedo is the absolute heartbeat of that team. And, Arsenal should be beating that Chelsea lineup. I thought Chelsea weren't brilliant again. Arsenal, weren't brilliant again. It always felt like that they potentially had a little bit more in the tank. I would say that. And it was comfortable for them for large parts. But I'm yet to see a performance in recent weeks where I go, wow, from Arsenal. And, I guess let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't particularly rate Arsenal at all. I mean, I said this a lot on this pod and a lot off this pod, and that's not just this season, it's in the last 3 or 4 years. They just don't take the game by the scruff of the neck. I would have looked at that Chelsea team when I was the Arsenal lads in the dressing room and gone, come on lads, let's just put this game to bed. Yeah, it is a tough away game, under lights, local derby, I get it. But Arteta's just a negative manager. They go 1-0 up. They shouldn't give Chelsea the ball. They shouldn't let Chelsea back in that game. They went 2-0 up when they got a cheap goal as well. Second half, when Gyökeres couldn't miss, because Sanchez made 2 bad errors, let's be honest about it. Gyökeres scored, and Arsenal fans will say, that's why we bought him and Fox in the box. Well,
he's back, James. He's back.
He couldn't miss. I mean, Sanchez, it's actually been all right this season, but made 2 horrible errors. I see that Rosinia was trying to take the blame off him. It'd be interesting to see Chelsea playing goal tomorrow against Brentford, actually. Jorgensen or Sanchez.
It'd be Sanchez.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they were 2-0 up and they let Chelsea back in the game. They really did. They should have just won that game 3 or 4-0, in my view, but they just can't do it. You watch every time Chelsea got the ball, Arsenal just, wow, it's impressive. They all sprint back and they get into a 4-5-1 very quickly, very negatively, defend quite close to their penalty area with the 4 centre-backs that they've got. They did play Ben White's a centre-back. Jurgen Timber played left-back. He is a centre-back by trade from Ajax. And the 2 lads, Gabriel and Saliba. And then they had Rice and Zubimendi, who played well again. And they just bring Saka and Trossard back as well. And they put 4-5-1 and go and break us down. Why not just go and win the game 3 or 4-0? Chelsea bought in a load of kids, got a load of inexperience without 3 of their best players, and he let them back in the tie. And in second leg, in a couple of weeks, when Chelsea do have Cole Palmer, he's not been great, but he's still producing bits of magic, and Caicedo, if he plays, obviously, and he's fit, and he's not done anything stupid again. I wouldn't be saying, oh yeah, Arsenal are through to the final against Man City at all in any way, stretch of imagination. I still think Chelsea have got some ability and they can score goals. If Delap's playing, they've got a focal point up front that can occupy Saliba and Gabriel. Arsenal fans will get nervous. They haven't won this competition since 1993 and they won it twice in their history. It starts getting nervous again.
Well,
we saw it against Liverpool. I think Chelsea are well in that tie, and Arsenal shouldn't have let them in that tie. The tie should be over.
Well, I think the weird thing from an Arsenal perspective was, I think you're right. They did have an opportunity, particularly when you get the early goal, is they had an opportunity to win that game, as you say, by maybe 3-goal margin. If they'd done that, they'd have been able to potentially rest players and stuff in the next leg as well. There seems such a weird why you would. I don't see what benefit being so negative gets Arsenal at times. They have so many quality players. I just don't. It feels like they're being stifled a little bit.
Yeah, some takeaway points as well from that about the Arsenal transfers in the summer. Abrici has a 65, whatever you want to call it, £1 million. He's played, what have you said here, 12 minutes in 8 games? And it was quite taken when they took off Odegaard and they brought on Moreno. And then they took off Declan Rice and they brought on Kai Havertz. Didn't play Eze. He hasn't played any real football since he got hooked to half-time away at Villa when he fell asleep for the Matty Cash goal. Madueke, where's he getting? Splinters from the bench again? Because Saka he wasn't great either again. So they spent all this money and these players must be going, hang on a minute here. Yeah, we're top of the Premier League. We're in the semi-final of the League Cup. We're top of the Champions League. We're through into the 4th round of the FA Cup. But I'm not playing any sort of minutes kind of thing. It's
well, I mean, we've touched on it before. One of the problems they have is it's going to be keeping everyone happy. When it's all going well when Havertz returns and Jesus and as you say, you didn't even mention Gyökeres then in terms of their summer transfers. Their success has been in spite of their summer transfers. The success has been really, I mean, Zubimendi would be the exception to that.
Yeah.
He's been brilliant. And the success has been more in spite than their summer signings as such. But they do have a big problem in terms of keeping these players happy, because I tell you what, Madueke, Lewis Skelly, Eze, all players who'd have been hoping to play in the World Cup, and they're not going to get a look in if they aren't playing game in, game out. And I look at someone like Lewis Skelly. He had that England left back position, this time last year. And you see someone like Lewis Hall now, he's moved so far clear of him. Nick O'Reilly, both of them. And, Lewis, and it's the same for Nwaneri and players like that as well, is these boys need to be playing football. And it's the one problem they have at Arsenal is that Arteta doesn't rotate the squad enough to give them, he doesn't trust them to give it, enough of the squad, enough minutes.
Well, Lewis Skelly is basically 4th choice left back now. behind Calafiore, Hincapié. I know they're injured, but Timber playing left back, Lewis Skelly. Yeah, he's got a decision to make. But it's maybe why Arsenal get a load of injuries, muscle injuries, just because their coach plays them regularly, makes them travel everywhere, doesn't give them days off. It's not just the plane, right? It's also the travel. They don't need to go to Portsmouth on a Sunday afternoon. Why are they even travelling? Like, you can beat them with your second team. Why are the first teamers even going on the bus? Or they would have gone on the bus rather than flying down, obviously. But why do they need to travel? Like, just stay at home with your family, stay at home in your own beds the night before, etc. Eat your own food, your private chef, if majority of them have got them, and just rest. Traveling takes it out of you. You know what it's like going on staying on the bus for 2-3 hours. You're not stretching, you're not moving, let alone going on a plane to wherever you want to go to. Getting home at silly o'clock in the morning, whole body clocks. I know they're used to it, but it's still part of rest and recovery.
But you're still having to do all the warm-ups as if you're getting ready for the actual match.
Because you might have to come on, you don't need to play them.
No. So I think that's enough VAR and Carabao Cup. So a couple of interesting things. Obviously, Alonso has gone at Real Madrid. I mean, obviously, I know you watched that Real Madrid-Barcelona game from Saudi. How surprised were you, based on the performance you saw, that Alonso got sacked?
Very surprised, actually, because they weren't actually too bad. I know they play counter-attacking football, but that's to be expected against Barcelona when they're going to have a lot of the ball and they play a different style of football. Yeah, they said mutual agreement. He was sacked Monday afternoon, and they brought on Arbeloa. Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I didn't see any footage afterwards, but it looks like Alonso. Yeah, Alonso tried to get them to guard of honour, and that Spanish Super Cup is big in Spain. It's not like our Charity Shield, which Arsenal fans is, and Man City, by the way, it's a friendly. Don't count it as a major competition. It's a friendly. Don't count it as on your major honours.
Can I at this point also mention Tottenham fans, because I've seen so many conversations about the number of major trophies Tottenham have won this week, and they're including Charity Shields. They're not major trophies.
Exactly. It's not a major trophy. Yeah, I was very surprised. And then even more surprised, they appointed straight away Alvaro Arbeloa, the Liverpool ex-player, as manager straight away. Like, nothing, just there you go, in the same press release. I mean, obviously, Alonso had lost the dressing room there. So this is the thing. We talked about it with Amarin at United. You appoint a manager that just won the Bundesliga, Leverkusen, playing a certain formation, predominantly 3 at the back, 4 midfield, 2 holding players, or a holding player and a ball player. They play the 10 and then they play 2 up front, or they sometimes play 2 and the 1, but normally the 1 and the 2. So he goes, you point him, Perez. The noise is that he didn't really want him, but he was kind of forcing to appointing him. So he goes in there and he wants to play 3 at the back, which is what you've appointed him for, because that's what his philosophy is. Players don't like it. Kel Surprise at Real Madrid, the players run that club. They always have done since Raúl back in the day and all that lot, and Figo and whoever you want to call them, Morientes and Guti, and then Ramos and then Ronaldo. Now we're coming on to this lot, Mbappe and Vinny Jr., etc., and Bellingham and whoever else they've got. So you have to change to the formation they want to play, 4-3-3, which Alonso's never played in his career. And his team doesn't set up that way. He's not very good a coach that way because he's just never done it. He's not got experience. So in that way, I wasn't really surprised that the players have won. And now they're in a massive hole. Massive hole, because they just got beaten by... Who did they get beaten on Wednesday night by in the Spanish Cup?
Albacete,
who are, 17th in League One, got beaten 3-2. I know Mbappe didn't play, Vinny Jr. played, but a few players played. So we now know that Arbeloa is not managing that club. He's just the face of it. It's the players that are managing it. Bellingham had a tit for tat in the Spanish media. So
do you think that... Okay, so I guess 2 things. One is the ego thing we've touched on with Chelsea and Rafinha. I think the issue of egos at Real Madrid is always going to be a little bit different because those egos are even bigger. But I think it shows you how important being able to manage egos are or is. And it's why I think Rafinha's on a hiding to nothing, I think, at Chelsea. The second point is managers. So Arbeloa, he seems like he's a temporary appointment. There's no way he can be a permanent appointment, irrespective of how, they just announced, obviously, he was the new manager. They haven't messed around with saying, oh, he's an interim manager or any of this nonsense that United have gone through. Is you would assume in the summer that Real Madrid have an idea as to who they want to appoint as their longer-term manager. We've touched on it before in terms of how few managers are available at the moment, how many will become potentially available in the summer. Are we thinking that they know exactly who they... I mean, obviously, they can pretty much get whoever they want. Do we think that they know who they want?
No, I don't think they know who they want at the moment. I think it's very political at Madrid. Well, we know it's political at Madrid with Perez and the players. And they also got the big issue with Vinny Jr. kind of thing. Do they keep him or they try and sell him to Saudi? I mean, Alvaro's them. I know I do. See you later, mate. Get the money, get a huge transfer. I don't think they know who they want because it's so political. I don't think Perez is a very good... He takes a lot of advice by the sound of it in Madrid from the players and the agents and Mendes probably. But I've just written down here who's available. Obviously, they could go back to Zidane, who won 3 back-to-back European titles, which is just an extraordinary achievement if you think about it. Just have a think about it. 3 back-to-back European titles. How hard it is. Guardiola's won 1 in 9.5 years at City. Could go to him. He's out of work. Hasn't done a thing since. Wouldn't surprise me. Great at managing egos. Proven, done it as a footballer. Done it as a manager for Real Madrid. Deschamps, you're not convinced, but he's leaving France. Nagelsmann, Pochettino, Tuchel. Then you can go on to Conte, Inzaghi. Slott's probably going to be available. Alonso's available, so you're not going there. You've got Glasner, you've got Amarin, you've got Iraola. You've got, 10, 12 there. I think then probably will go back to someone like, you could argue Ancelotti, but he's not going to be. I think they'll go back to Zidane or they'll try and get someone like a Nagelsmann.
I could see Iraola there.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't doubt it. I don't know why. I've just got a sneaky feeling that. So I'm reading a book at the moment. I don't read many sports books generally, but I'm reading a book about Emery, and it's brilliant, I have to say. And it talks through his career, all the various places like Villarreal, and I would certainly recommend it as a book. And he talks about Iraola in there quite a few times. And obviously in Spain, there's a lot of political considerations along the way as well. And I don't know. I don't know. But
another one is Luis Enrique at PSG. I think
he's Barcelona.
He's Barcelona. I know he played briefly for Madrid back in the day, but I think he's hanging on for the bar. He's got unfinished business at Barcelona. But yeah, there's a lot of managers.
So around. So one consideration from the fallout of this: Alonso, Liverpool, summer.
Yeah.
What do you think? Think it's happening?
Yeah. Short and sweet answer. Yeah, I think.
If only it could always be like that, James.
No, I think quickly on it. I think it's quite telling that Liverpool aren't on this at all. Obviously, Bradley's out. He's not going to be out until he's going to be out for 12 months. It's a pretty serious injury. It sounds horrific, the injury. I read an article written by a chap called Simon Bundish, and he's a sports, I don't know what his terminology, but he's very good, and he wrote a very good piece on Substack the other day about the injury. It's not a 6-month injury, it's a 12-month injury. And it's quite telling that Liverpool aren't buying anyone this summer, not giving Slot any more money. He's only got until summer next year, 27 left in his contract. They're not renewing that. There's no talk of renewing that. Alonso was their first choice in the summer of 24, wasn't it? Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that they're keeping all the money. And you look at their team, Liverpool's with Alonso 3 at the back. And I briefly said to you, there's a couple of players that they need. They need the ball-playing midfielder. They need a couple of centre-backs. A couple of lads at Tottenham I'd like, but Tottenham fans won't like that. Well, there's 4 at Tottenham I'd like, but it's not going to happen. I'll name them: Van der Ven, Porro, Bergau, and Archie Gray. Tottenham need to keep hold of all 4 of them. But anyway, yes, Alonso to Liverpool in summer, please.
So touching on Tottenham, it was quite interesting. They have the 2 new appointments this week. Heitinga, who was at Ajax, used to be at Liverpool. He's come in as like a first-team coach under Frank. And they've also appointed a guy called Mawson, I don't know quite how you pronounce it, who is a new director of football operations to work alongside Langer. It's always interesting to see, you never see particularly short-term the impact of these appointments, but it's interesting that Tottenham clearly see issues. I know Patrici's obviously left, although Mawson isn't expected to be a direct replacement. But it is interesting to see how these things sort of play out. One thing we did touch on right at the start of these podcasts was about Tottenham and the lack of Levy being there. He always used to be a great figurehead for the fans to vent their fury at. I think as we're seeing more and more, that's partly why it's getting directed at Frank in the way that it is. They don't have an outlet at which to voice their sort of discontent. And that discontent just seems to be growing louder and louder.
Big game tomorrow against West Ham.
Okay, let's touch on other sports for now. There was a little bit of cricket this week. Was a very interesting game in midweek in the Big Bash. Hurricanes and Heat. Don't know if you saw it, but essentially they needed 11 runs off the last 2 overs with 5 wickets left. There were several £1 million matched on Betfair at 1.01. They didn't get over the line. They needed 6 off the last over, and they only scored 3. You don't see that type of thing happen very often, obviously. It's fun to watch, though.
Yeah, talking a bit of Bash, there's been 700 this year. I was watching a bit of it yesterday, watching Melbourne Renegades play yesterday. 700s in the Big Bash this year. I don't think the quality's been as high. They haven't got the overseas superstars at all. More cricket. Darren Mitchell scored 100 in his second ODI. He's turned himself into a useful cricketer. Son of John, the rugby union coach for England ladies. He's a useful cricketer. They're warming up for the T20 World Cup in India, where it's going to be played in Sri Lanka, but they're out there now. And the Under-19 World Cup has just started. So, yeah, any more talents coming through from... There's always... The one country I look out for, by the way, is South Africa. Because they do produce some absolute brilliant talents. Now, they lose them because of their political situation. But I remember watching Rabada come through. It must have been 10, 11 years ago. And I was working with a couple of South Africans who I still work with. And this kid running in at 17, 18, bowling that 140 clicks. These youngsters didn't know what was going on. It was quite entertaining. And he's obviously proved himself to be a superstar as well. But yeah, sometimes you do pick the odd look at it and go, wow, he's going to make it pretty quickly.
Rugby, I see New Zealand have been in the news this week.
Sacked Scott Robertson. Big news. 20 months out before the 27 World Cup in Australia. Sacked the coach. So there was murmurings going on at the back end of last season at the end of the European leg of their tour. And obviously, they're coming for their Grand Slam. They call it Grand Slam. We know it's not. They've beaten Ireland in Chicago. They then just got past over the line against Scotland after being 21-0 up and then scoring a last-minute try. They got absolutely annihilated at Twickenham in the end by England, and then they beat Wales, but anyone can beat Wales. But anyway, there was murmurings, and the big murmuring was a couple of senior players, and the big senior player was Ardy Surveyor, who's the flanker come number 8, their best player, was refusing basically to play under, basically gave the New Zealand Rugby Board an ultimatum: it's him or I. And if you want to keep Robertson, then I'm not playing in the World Cup. I'm going to Japan. Or there was rumours about coming to Leinster. I think that was just 2 + 2 = 5 because of Ironi and Barrett have come over. So basically, yeah.
Do you know what his problem with the coach was?
No, I don't know. The murmurings are that Robertson obviously was unbelievable coach at the Crusaders and the Super Rugby down there, and it just hasn't transpired that he can bring his game plan and his whatever sorts across from club rugby into international rugby. And they just didn't like him. They've been damn well. He's actually had a decent record. He's got a 73% win record, which is better than his previous guys. Hansen was 70%. I think it's a style of play. Their talent pool is draining. A lot of them aren't playing rugby union now because they want to play rugby league because of the money. The NRL, they've got one team in the NRL. They're producing another team, I think, in a couple of years' time to go in the NRL as well. There's more money in the NRL. New Zealand Rugby Board don't pay that much. Hence the reason why you see a lot of players going to Japan and coming to Europe in between the World Cups to chase the dollar, which doesn't surprise me and don't blame them at all. So, yeah, so that's the big news. 20 months out before World Cup is a big change. So the favourites there are Jamie Joseph, the Highlanders coach. He would want his mate Tony Evans, who's on the backroom staff at South Africa, to come in, I think. Dave Rennie as well. And there's murmurings overnight about Joe Smith, who's just resigned as the Australian coach. Les Reed's now the Australian coach. He is obviously a Kiwi. Would he be tempted to come do one last thing? If I'm a Kiwi player, I want Joe Smith ahead of Jamie Joseph, thanks so much, every day of the week, twice on a Sunday. I think they've got a big decision there. They haven't got a CEO at the moment. So David Kirk, who I've been reading about it, he's the New Zealand scrum half who won the first ever World Cup. He's kind of running it at the moment. So he's the guy who will make the decision. I think also the players, we talked about it with Real Madrid. I think certain players like Ardy Surveyor, Richard Miranga is going to come back from Japan to play in the World Cup. Obviously, the Barretts, the 3 brothers, they'll help make it a decision. If I was them, I'd want Joe Smith. But talking about you got the European Cup Challenge and a Challenge Cup this weekend. So you've got games. You haven't got great games because this is the last round of games before the last 16. So you've got Bristol Bordeaux on Sunday, which is going to be an absolute brilliant game. Bordeaux said on Monday the best team in the league, but Bristol have been tearing up. Obviously, scored 60 points down in South Africa last weekend. So let's see how they recover from that journey. Glasgow Sarries on Sunday as well at 5:30. Sarries need to win that to keep them to get themselves a home tie. Home time rugby is huge. It's probably a 10, 12 point advantage at home. It's that big. I don't know why. It always has been. I don't get it. It's the same. Well, it's not the same field because some are played on AstroTurf. The advantages of Sarries this weekend are they're playing in Glasgow. It's on AstroTurf. They're used to playing it on AstroTurf as well. They played really well against Toulouse. Atoje, Ben Earl, Owen Farrell probably start at 12. So, yeah, big game. Toulouse will beat Sale. So Toulouse will get in as well. So it's some big games this weekend in the rugby union sphere. But the big news is Robertson being sacked.
Okay.
Sorry, one thing. England have lost another tight head prop. So now that Asher Apoku for jaw. Sorry, it's quite a hard word from Sale, the young lad. He's out injured with a shoulder injury. So now him and Will Stewart both out of 6 stations. So they only have Joe Hayes as a senior tight head prop. There's a there's one position, that and hooker, where they're really struggling in depth now. So they're probably going to go to Billy Surley, who's a young kid at Bath, he's 20. Ferguson, who's 21 at Gloucester, or Trevor Davison, the 33-year-old at Northampton. So there's a bit of a worry there for Borthwick, with the Six Nations coming up in 3 weeks now, I think.
Let's talk about. So snooker was quite interesting this week, Masters. So, a pretty extraordinary thing happened where the first 8 games, and effectively the last 16, all finished with the same scoreline, 6-2. It's absolutely bonkers. So it continues.
220,000 to 1 that would have been. And if you picked the right player, it was something like into millions. It was ridiculous kind of thing.
So I think later today we've got a couple more matches. We've got Robertson against Wilson and the 2 Chinese lads who no one's ever heard of. No, I'm joking. The 2 Chinese lads are playing as well.
Yeah, but last night, right? So quickly, Luke, on that. So Higgins won yesterday.
I saw he beat Zintong 6-5.
6-5. And then another 6-2 last night. Trump versus Allen. I don't know what's happened to Mark Allen, right? Because he was, when he came on the scene, I know he's old now, he's 39. He's not, well, he is old, he's not old. Depends how old people are, obviously. But he came on and he would pot everything. He would never really turn down pots. But in the last 3 or 4 years, he's just become a quite methodical, safety-first operator. And I think that's harming his game. I really do. I think he should go back to what he was and start taking some more pots on. Because last night, the first 4 frames last night were downright average. If you saw that in a club thing, you'd be like, lads, what's going on here? It's like a 55-minute third frame. It was garbage. And then Trump came out and won the last 4 frames after the mid-session interval. But Mark Allen, I'd rather him just start playing more attacking rather than being a safety first and trying to wait for the opposition player to make a mistake. These players sometimes are too good. And if they get on a roll, you know, they can rack off 3 or 4 frames in a row, and game's over at 36. Yeah. Robertson was very impressive, by the way.
I think one of the problems you have is that, you know, these guys have been around for a long time, and you never quite know what's going on behind the scenes. And, you know, confidence plays such a big part. You know, you only have to lose a little bit of confidence, and then you start worrying about losing and all these sorts of things. And before you know it, you know, what made you special is no longer there.
I fancy Robertson again. I know I fancied him from the UK Open, but he looks like he'll probably play Trump in the final if it goes to Sunday night. The semi-finals tomorrow, final on Sunday. Best of 19. It must be the final. Must be on Sunday.
So, bit of golf. Obviously, a little bit of fallout from the Live amnesty as such. So Brooks has obviously returned to PGA Tour. He got given a $5 million fine or dollar fine and some future equity being sacrificed. Not a huge punishment, really, I don't think, in the grand scheme of things. What was interesting is the PGA Tour turned around and basically said to DeChambeau, Rahm, and Smith that if they wanted to come back, the deal was there, open to them until the 2nd of February. They've since said no thanks, which was interesting.
We'll ask questions in a couple of weeks ago when the deadline's getting closer.
I know. I think I don't see that changing.
I see Rahm coming back.
Well, he's under contract for another. He's got contract for another year. So
money talks.
Well, no, money does talk, right? And you're absolutely right, James. Money talks, and that's why he won't go back to the PGA Tour anytime soon, I suspect.
I think he'll go back.
I don't. Not yet.
I don't think the reason why I think Rahm will go back is I think he wants to go back and prove himself and win more majors and won more PGA Tour events. Bryson, obviously, his YouTube channel's just skyrocketed ever since he'd done the Donald Trump thing. I think he's quite happy just doing that now. along with playing the 12 live events and the 4 majors kind of thing.
All right,
Cameron
James,
Smith is not a loss.
Let's have a wager on Rahm. I go that he doesn't return.
Ever or this season?
No, this on 2nd of February.
Yeah, I'll buy you a beer if he doesn't, and you buy me a beer if he does.
Evening of drinks, James. Let's go with it.
Okay, we're going to Wetherspoons then.
As classy as ever. Obviously, Liv have signed a couple of other players like Arne and Dietrich and Perez. I mean, not guys who particularly moved the needle. A bit of golf in Dubai this week. Rory, last time I looked, maybe an hour ago, was leading, although Lowry was just behind.
Just looking now, they're 4-way at the top. Armitage, Lawrence, McIlroy, Lowry, all 4 under into their back 9.
Weather's meant to be poor this weekend, isn't it? I think.
Really windy this weekend. So if you're having a look at watching it, obviously try and look at players.
Ever back Rory when it's windy. He's just not a good wind player. Relative
to one player there. There's one player, obviously Lowry. I mean, Puig, he's having a shocker today. Well, he's not having a shock. He's 2 overs. He's 2 behind at the moment. He's another player who's going to be.
Sony Open started last night. Tricky conditions again as well. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Tennis, there was quite an interesting story this week, James, about the $1 million 1-point slam. So part of the Australian Open. So they had a tournament where it was literally, as it says on the tin, 1 point basically between players. And what was incredible was the tournament was won by an amateur called Jordan Smith. He ended up winning the $1 million and pocketing effectively just under £500,000 sterling. Got loads of attention. Obviously, it helps when you have an amateur, amateur. He's clearly a good amateur, right? So he's a tennis coach. He's not some
like you and I, yeah.
Speak for yourself, James. But no, he's clearly, I think he's a tennis coach. He's clearly pretty good, but it's still a great. I think just quite a fun innovation. Sport needs more of these sort of innovations.
Yeah, I think the way it's going, I mean, I'd love to see in other sports, like we briefly talked about offline yesterday about in golf, you could do it. You could do it in other things. Things like that, getting crowds or players or fans involved is brilliant for the sport.
Something like a one-hole challenge in golf would be interesting, because I've even seen you get a par at times, James. Not often, but we have seen you make the odd par. So on a one-hole basis, anything could happen.
You could do it in golf, right? You could have different pins. So you can have an amateur pin and a pro pin. And put the pro pin tucked away, whatever, and put the amateur pin in the middle of the green. So at least you may, if it's say a par 3, for example, 150 yards, you'd want to make it. You'd fancy if it's just a flat green, the pro's going to put it within 5 feet.
Oh, James, don't even start with that nonsense.
That winds you up.
You sound like someone off the TV.
Radar.
I think all said and done, just fair play to tennis for trying something a bit different and backing it up with decent money as well.
Okay.
So a couple of other stories. So in basketball, there's a big breaking case in the last day or two involving Chinese basketball and college basketball. So 39 players across 17 teams have been indicted with regard to point shaving. Point shaving being where you're effectively manipulating not necessarily the outcome of the game, but the margins of the game. So point shaving traditionally would be where you might miss shots to make sure a handicap is covered or not covered as such. So it may not influence the actual outcome of the game, but you're manipulating the outcome of the final score of the game, should we say, for betting purposes. So I sort of read more into it, and it was interesting because it started off sort of around COVID time, and it really involved Chinese basketball to start with, and they obviously saw that they were having success, and then it sort of filtered through. As these things go, they saw they're having success with that. Where should we go next? Let's go and see if we can recruit some college basketball players. And the sums being talked about were pretty mind-blowing in terms of, from a betting perspective, being able to get these sums of money on. I mean, there was talk about bets being struck of just under $500,000.
Wow.
Particularly given the size of the games, is pretty minimal. So some proper money involved, and it's just quite interesting story. Be interesting. I think part of the problem is I think there's just tip of the iceberg, I suspect, with these things. Another sport, and I mean, you follow bits and pieces, but probably not hugely, is baseball. So the big news overnight was that Kyle Tucker has joined the Dodgers. Obviously, Dodgers defending champions. They'll be going for 3 in a row. They already have an insane roster, and they've effectively acquired the best free agent as well. He's on, I think, $60 million a year. Their salary. There's meant to be a salary cap in baseball, and it's actually interesting because it sort of translates to football a little bit, because you have Todd Bowley is in charge of, obviously, the Dodgers, and he's also in charge of Chelsea. So there are some similarities across the two teams. And one of the things Dodgers have done very well is they've been able to do these effectively referrals for salary. So basically, Ohtani, for example, he's not counting for his full amount against the salary cap this year. It's been pushed down the road, and he'll count against the salary cap in like 10, 15 years time, which is crazy. But it also raises the point, James, and you'll like this one. And my daughter asked me about the Carabao Cup in midweek, and we were talking about it on Thursday, and she was like, "Oh, so it's going to be Arsenal against Manchester City." And she goes, "Oh, so we obviously want Manchester City to win." And I said, yes. And she goes, "Why do we always want Manchester City to win?" And the point was that I regard Manchester City as almost irrelevant, their success. Is in the same way the Dodgers are finding all sorts of loopholes and stuff to get around the rules in terms of building super teams. It feels very much like all the success Manchester City are having at the moment it's all been built on incredibly questionable foundations. And, obviously it's brought Manchester City fans a great deal of joy. But as a football fan, I just think pretty irrelevant what Manchester City do, because all of it is tarnished. Whether they're found guilty of the 115 charges or not, they've clearly been some very questionable practices in terms of what the rules are, certainly against the spirit of the rules. And the same applies to the Dodgers in baseball.
No comment, but yes.
Talking about the American sports, obviously we had the NFL. So there was the Monday night game where Houston ended up beating Pittsburgh quite comfortably in the end. It was quite close going into the final quarter. It shouldn't really have been that close before the Texans ran out comfortable winners. Rodgers could well be that for his career. Not a great way to finish. But what it does do is it sets up 4 great divisional matches this weekend. So having a quick look at the games, we've got Buffalo at Denver. Denver at home, Mile High, obviously at altitude. It's always been, when you're talking about home advantage of rugby, this is one of the stadiums. It's a bit like Joburg in rugby, in South Africa. There's a definite advantage to playing at altitude. They're able to do it. They know what they're doing with it. So the home advantage for Denver is significant. Obviously, Denver coming into that off a bye. Buffalo got the job done against Jacksonville last week. Josh Allen, he's obviously carrying also. I think he's had 3 different injury tags this week. He is clearly the best quarterback left in the playoffs, but he's having to almost carry them single-handedly to any success. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. And he's up against a good defense in Denver. It'll be interesting to see if they can get the running game going a little bit more than they did against the Jags. Try and take some of the pressure off Allen, because Denver have some pretty good cornerbacks like Surtain, who pretty good at shutting down some of that passing game. So it will be interesting to see. I'm also interested to see how Bo Nix gets on. Tends to be a little bit hit and miss at times. Not sure he's an elite quarterback, but we will see.
Yeah, how he can get the ball to Sutton as wide receiver. I tend in these games, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I tend to go to the experience, the players and the best quarterback. And I think that there will be tight games. All 4 of them will be tight games, especially this one. I think, looking at the betting there, it's Denver slight favourites. They're 10-11. I just think, Josh Allen, to see how he's recovered from last week. He took some bangs and some knocks. And if Denver can get to him, they're going to have to start doing something else, as you say. Yeah, tight game Saturday night.
I mean, it'll be fun to watch. We've got 49ers at Seattle. Obviously, a replay of a game a couple of weeks ago. Different venue. Seattle, decent team at home. Obviously, coming off bye as well. One interesting thing that appeared again overnight is that Darnold has appeared on the injury report with an oblique injury. He's listed as questionable. He's obviously expected to play. But obliques are one of these strange ones where we see it with cricket. We see it with any sport where you're throwing a ball. You don't want oblique issues. Obviously, the obliques are in this sort of area, and obviously just the motion of throwing, not ideal. Obviously, he's expected to play. San Fran did well to get through that game against, I think, what was it, the Eagles. Did come at a cost, though, with Kittle coming off with an Achilles injury. Obviously, 49ers need to find more offense than they did a couple of weeks ago, and it's whether really they can get McCaffrey probably into some space, as Seattle are very good against the run.
One thing about that is can the 49ers pressurise Sam Darnold? Because he's unproven, let's be honest. He really is. Can they get to him? And when he is pressurised, he's nothing special. He ranks 32nd in interception rate in a bad way this season. So,
he is always that question mark as to whether
that's a key matchup in that game. Is can 49ers defense get at Sam Darnold? If they can't, then I can just see it being out of the 4, one of the games where it can be 10, 15 points kind of thing, 14 points kind of thing.
I think one thing interesting for San Fran is obviously, they're coming into this game on a short rest as well, which is not ideal. They're going to be battered and bruised. They do get Trent Williams back for this game. He obviously played last week. He missed the first time these two teams played a couple of weeks ago. He wasn't playing in that game. He is one of San Fran's most important players, and he's hugely important for McCaffrey. Other games, so Rams are at Chicago. So this is interesting because the weather in Chicago is meant to be absolutely brutal. It's going to be freezing cold, might be raining. Rams do not have a good record in these situations in this weather. I think Stafford is something like 1-8 in these types of games where it's cold weather games. They're clearly the better team, the Rams, but it's the playoffs, and playoff football does strange things. One thing in the Rams' favor is that they're very good in terms of the running game. Chicago aren't brilliant at stopping the running game, so it'd be interesting to see if they can dominate on the ground. If they're dominating on the ground, it means that Stafford isn't having to throw much either. So it's a Bears defense that's lived off turnovers. If you're not getting the turnovers, then it's going to be very difficult to imagine Chicago getting anything in that game.
Yeah, it's all about Puka and Nakua. Like, can he get out space and can Stafford find him? But as you say, with the weather, will he do it? Will he try and throw those big outside passes that he does?
He might not need to. I mean, so much depends on game state. So if Rams get up early, they'll just keep running. It'd be interesting to see. And then the final game is Houston at New England. So obviously Seattle have got one of the best defenses. Houston have got one of the best defenses. They were brilliant against Pittsburgh on Monday night. It's really a question of how much pressure they can put on May. I mean, May struggled a little bit in terms of pressure, even against the Chargers, which would be slightly worrying. One problem for Texans is they're missing their best wide receiver, Nico Collins. He's expected to be out with concussion. And he is their one outstanding offensive player that they have. So he will be a loss. It'd be interesting to see again. I mean, again, 4 great games. Can't wait to watch them.
Yeah, man, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at Houston's. They're like 6-4. I think we talked about it. I mean, I like their defense. They were mightily impressive on Monday night. The highlights I've seen against the Steelers. I know old man watches, but they got after him. And they'll go after Drake again. And if they can, he's a kid, let's be honest. He's nothing, I think defense at this stage of the season is huge. I think it's more important than offense. I really do. When taking this fight,
so I think the interesting
defense is good.
So I think one of the interesting things is Patriots' run game hasn't been brilliant this year. Stevenson, Henderson hasn't. It's been okay. It's not been brilliant. A lot of the success that Patriots have had is because of May. So if Texans can get after him, I'd be surprised if the Patriots blow the Texans apart in terms of from a running perspective. So it'll definitely be interesting to see whether they can get that pressure on Drake.
Well, I'll say who I think will win. Come back to the first game Saturday night. Seattle, I think, will beat the 49ers. Well, I hope anyway, because the anti-post, well, not the anti-post bet. I think the Texans will upset the Patriots. I think home field advantage for the Bears as well. And the Bills against the Broncos. Home advantage might just sneak it there, but I worry about Bo Nix. 3.5. I've gone for 3.5. Can I take 3.5?
So just what I think about, there were a couple of other things interesting in NFL. Was a couple of coach changes. So looks like John Harbaugh is going to join the Giants. And then obviously Mike Tomlin's left the Steelers after 19 seasons. Incredible the record he had in terms of never having a losing season. He hasn't had particularly good quarterbacks there in recent years. I think they don't know what they have, I think would be the point I would make there. Incredible job he did there. I think we have some darts this week. Well, it continues. Obviously, it was on last night in Bahrain. So tonight we've got Littler against Gerwin, and then we've got Humphreys, Aspinall, Noppert, Van Veen, and Van Gerwen against Bunting. One of the interesting things with darts that I saw, again, being innovative, is in the tournament in Saudi Arabia coming up.
Next week, that is.
It's 100 grand for a 9-darter, which should focus the mind a little bit for players, but not just that. So the innovation is that they've introduced this thing called a golden bull. I think it's going to be called, where if you complete the 9-darter, you then get a chance to hit the ball for another 100,000. So quite good entertainment, and I certainly wouldn't back against one of these players. If they do get the 9-darter hitting that ball. Although there is quite a bit of pressure on it if it's not someone like Littler. Littler has so much money, it doesn't really matter to him. But some of these other players, it's quite a lot of money.
Yeah, it's live on ITV4 here in the UK. Yeah, something similar they do in Saudi Arabia with the golden ball in snooker. If you're on a 147, they put the golden ball up at the top of the table. So yeah, that would be fun if someone gets a 9-darter and they do get it. Yeah, there's a lot of money in snooker and darts these days. Yeah.
And then the only other sport I think there's was touching on boxing. So the Magnificent Sevens had to be rescheduled.
Yeah, March the 28th. Moses is injured, isn't he? Going to James Franklin?
Yeah, so he's injured. So
there's a bit of horse racing.
Magnificent Seven, where one of them gets injured and it has to be rescheduled. So not quite so magnificent, but
there's some horse racing tomorrow and on. Well, there's a bit actually today. They're doing a 3-way card at Windsor today, Ascot tomorrow, and Windsor on Sunday, and it's £40. You can get a ticket for all three. Obviously, pretty close, Windsor Ascot here in the UK. So tomorrow you've got a Clarence House chase from Ascot. You've got Ile Tomp against John Bon. Ile Tomp will win that. Mullins, Townend. John Bon is partnered by a new jockey. Harry Cobden in the week was announced as JP McManus's retained rider in Ireland and England, or Ireland and the UK, sorry, starting next season, so May, and he's got a job because De Boinville's up in Haydock, where the Peter Marsh chase is going on, the handicap there. But yeah, that's big news that JP McManus has got Harry Cobden replacing essentially Mark Walsh, which is a bit of a strange one. Came out of the blue. Well, it hasn't come out of the blue. It's been murmurings. Obviously, Nichols, where Cobden was, hasn't got any decent horses. Obviously, sadly, lost Cave to Burley last weekend. But Ile Tomp will hack up tomorrow at Ascot. I know they're probably soft going there. I know he's 8-15, but he looks a mighty impressive horse. And he got Thurles on Sunday. He got a decent card over in Ireland in Thurles and Tipperary on Sunday.
So obviously, Premier League this weekend. I'm conscious of time. A lot longer probably than we wanted, but that is what it is. Obviously, you've got the Manchester Derby on Saturday lunchtime. Very interesting match. City need to be winning that game. It's a good chance to put some pressure on Arsenal ahead of their tricky away game at Forest. It's tough to imagine City not getting it done, honestly. This United team is not good.
Yeah, obviously, United big news is also Michael Carrick is in charge. I'm not talking about it.
Are they going for new manager bounce every week, or
the new manager bounce? Yeah, talked about it recently. It's media miss. Anyway, they appointed obviously Johnny Evans, who was a loan manager, went on holiday to Dubai, came back under Fletcher. He got a job. Yeah, he's qualified for that as well. Jonathan Woodgate, he's qualified as a coach. Yeah, he was an ex-scout for Liverpool, by the way, in Spain because of his Spanish connections, and now he's a coach at Man United. Yeah, so he's qualified for that role as well.
You begin to sound like King James.
Yeah, but I've been banging on about it for months and years, actually. So going back, and then they're appointed. The funny thing is they appointed the ex-England coach who had worked under Gareth Southgate. Please be true to Gareth Southgate in the summer. Anyway, quickly moving on to the Manchester Derby tomorrow. So the last 10 years at Old Trafford has seen 3 draws, 5 City wins, 2 United wins, only been 18 goals. So there hasn't been many goals. The referee is Anthony Taylor, who's born and bred in Manchester. Interesting one. He's refereed 23 games this season in the Premier League, Cup games, Champions League. He's given 88 yellow cards, 7 penalties, 1 second yellow red card, and only 1 direct red card. So let's see how he referees this game. He's normally a referee that lets things go in the first half, like most of them do, and then starts booking players afterwards when they made exactly the same foul 50 minutes earlier. yeah, it's a game that City need to win. I'll be interested to see what they do. Roger will definitely come back into midfield. I'd imagine O'Reilly will go back to left back. I don't think Diaz and Guardiola definitely aren't fit. So, do they play Ake?
I think they'll keep.
Or they'll play Elaine and Kusanov again.
I would keep Kusanov and Elaine. Like they've done it. They went to Newcastle, kept a clean sheet. It's, there's clearly some understanding there. I don't see why you would change it, to be honest.
I can see not a comfortable win, but I think City will win this. Well, I will say that. So I contradict myself. I think they'll win comfortable. Never comfortable. It's a derby, it's a local derby, but City are by far the better team. They were really impressive against Newcastle. We talked about it. This United team are absolutely garbage. They're rubbish. Let's stop beating the bush. They're a terrible team. I know they've got Mbremu will be back and Amad Diallo, he'll be back. They both surely won't play, will they?
I mean, that's one of the big quandaries. So one of the problems we have when doing these previews such as this is a lot of the team news and stuff isn't out yet. So the press conferences in terms of player updates hasn't happened yet. So tends to be sort of stuff to end up working a lot on, certainly in the next 12 hours, I would say, in terms of preparation, looking at these games. And it was also, I mean, we saw that last week when we were talking about Casado being suspended. When you're doing it so far out from when the actual game takes place, it can be, lineup changes can happen a lot, and team news is, thin on the ground at that point.
Yeah, we're going to Man United. I see Maguire was obviously came on when they last played in the FA Cup against Brighton on Sunday. So I wonder if he will start just because of his aerial ability against Harden, physicality. I don't think they want to play Martinez against Harden because he'll just eat him alive. He really will, just bully him. You can't have that against him. Semenyo will bully whoever plays left back. If they play Luke Shaw, wow, that could be a complete mismatch. City, will they play Doku off the left? I think they kind of have to, don't they?
My initial thoughts would be that be Rodri holding, it'd be Foden and Silva, Doku on the left, Semenyo on the right, Haaland up top. I think where it gets really tricky is Cherki, but I think it's difficult to have Cherki, Doku, and Semenyo in the same lineup. So I suspect
they do like having Foden and Silva. Who do actually not track back, but they can go and collect the ball to centre backs. Cherki's not that type of player.
Yeah, so whilst Cherki looks sensational, I think if Cherki plays, it would be instead of either Semenyo or Doku. But that's how I would see City. I think it would be O'Reilly back to left back. I think they'll keep the Kusanov and Aileen in the middle. Obviously, Donnarumma returning goal.
I can see City winning that. Actually, I know I said it when I think
they'll win. I just think it's just different levels in this game, and there's just a big gulf in class between the two. I mean, obviously, United they have players like obviously Bruno who can do magic things, but as a general rule, I think City are different class to this United team.
There'll be a lot running around for Man United tomorrow morning or tomorrow daytime. They won't see a lot of the ball.
So Arsenal have obviously got, I think, quite a tricky game away at Forest. I think Forest is always a tricky place to go, City ground. I think the only problem with it is that Forest have been so poor in recent weeks. I mean, in many respects, it's a great time for Arsenal to be playing them. But we did see them, Forest caused City problems there when they were there maybe 3 weeks ago, I think it was, when City ended up winning 2-1 late on. And yeah, I think it's a big test for Arsenal. When you keep having 3 games a week, these are the tricky ones, I think, when you're away at a mid to lower table team. You're expected to win, and anything but a win would be disappointing for Arsenal. I think Arsenal had an awful lot of things go their way. So whether it be, continually scoring set pieces, whether it be refereeing decisions, whatever it may be, but it seems like they've had a lot of things go their way in recent weeks. I just wonder if at some point, they will get a red card, or they will, Gibbs White will score a screamer or something like that, which sets them back at some stage. But big game for Arsenal. They'll know what they need to do after that City game. It's going to be interesting to see if City can put a bit of pressure on them.
Yeah, so a couple of stats from that. For that game, Forest have failed to score in 2 of the last 5 games, and Arsenal have scored in the last 8 away games. So,
Arsenal are expected to win. My worry would be is Forest under Dyche have looked really poor. I'm obviously intrigued to see how Anderson gets on. This is big boys football. See how he gets on against Rice in the middle of that park. We've touched on it before. It's not that I don't think he's a good player. I just think he's on the overrated side. This is an opportunity for him to show everyone just how good he is when you're up against a proper player in Rice and Zubimendi.
Yeah, I wonder if Forest will play Douglas Luiz and give Anderson a bit more license to, go on rather than.
I would have thought it'd be interesting to see how Sangar's come out of AFCON. If he's fit enough, I think he'll start in midfield alongside Anderson. I don't think you want Douglas Luiz in there. I think Luiz is better suited against the weaker teams, if I'm honest. I don't think you want, you can't have Luiz as he's not a holding midfielder.
Yeah, but I think Anderson's better as a more of a destroyer kind of thing. He can do that role, obviously, but I'd want him to match up against Rice and let someone else do that defensive role. But yeah, Spurs West Ham's an interesting game. The sack race. Well, they're not going to sack Frank after disappointing Heinz, I don't think anymore. But they might do if they lose tomorrow night. He could be under real pressure.
All right. Well, let's just talk about one aspect of this. Okay. So I've seen so many people talk about the sign Conor Gallagher. It means that Frank's being backed in the transfer market. People have to realise that there's a big disconnect now between managers and signing players. So often it's the directors of football. So in this situation, it will have been Langer who will have decided that the Tottenham squad should, get Gallagher. It's not necessarily a reflection on Thomas Frank and his position within the club. It's different if you're signing players for specific formations. So if Amrin was signing wing backs, that would be different, given that if a new manager was to come in, that you wouldn't want a team full of sort of specialist players in specialist positions. Gallagher will fit into most teams, in terms of his sort of skill set. So I don't think it reflects on Frank and his future at Tottenham. I think obviously Gallagher will help. I don't think he's the answer to their problems. Tottenham continue to have a lot of injuries. Obviously, Richarlison got injured against Villa, another one which, is going to be out for a few weeks. I'm intrigued to see, because Nuno will go there. He'll park the bus a little bit, and it's whether Tottenham can break him down. And Frank hasn't shown any sort of propensity to be able to do that recently. But he cannot afford to have a terrible performance. It's one thing if you play well and you don't get the win, but Frank cannot afford a terrible performance and not get a win either. It's pressure big time.
Don't think there'll be goals in that game. Richarlison is a big miss for them. 7 weeks out with a hamstring injury. Looks like he's been scoring goals recently, and without him, they don't. I know Solanke on the bench in couple of recent games, so he's been out for a while as well. Moani doesn't look like he can score. I worry about Tottenham to say if the pressure gets on, fans again could be, West Ham we know are poor, but if West Ham, I can't see many goals in that game to be honest either. But yeah, West Ham will sit back, and as you said, Frank's not showing any ability at the moment under Tottenham to take the game by the scruff of the neck and go on then, we can go and win this game with all the possession and things like this. So, and we know what they'll do, West Ham. We've seen it under Nuno at Forest as well. Sit back, try and be solid, and then try and rely on your likes of your Bowen, and you need that up front to nick you a goal somewhere along the line, like they did last season.
Wolves Newcastle's interesting. I think that's a tricky game for Newcastle.
Yeah.
Coming off that Carabao Cup game, they looked a bit leggy towards the end of that game after the Bournemouth game. I'm not sure how brilliant he's not bad at switching his squad up, but a lot of tired legs in there. Wolves have got a little bit of swagger and confidence about them now. Trickier game than you would have thought. Maybe, I mean, this is where the fixture list has so many vagaries. That game has become so much harder for Newcastle now than, a trip to Wolves a month ago. Completely different game. And
Mateus Mane is the young kid there at Wolves who's getting a lot of rave reviews. He's another one. He is one to look out for a game there. Strand Larson, I know he got a hat trick in the FA Cup. Will he start? Yeah, Wolves are on the up under Rob Edwards. They're now not the worst team in the Premier League. Burnley are the worst team in the Premier League. It's a tricky game for Newcastle. Really tricky.
So,
especially when they've got European Cup as well in the midweek as well. They're going to have to start rotating some players there.
So Chelsea Brentford, I think it's going to be interesting as well. I think it's a tricky game for Chelsea. Obviously, Caicedo is expected to return. James and Gusto expected to return. Not 100% sure on Palmer, probably. We'll get a better idea again about Rosenior in these sorts of games. I think the sort of takeaway I'd have tactically from Rosenior was in that game against Arsenal was you had that ridiculous situation where it was 4th, 5th minute of injury time and you had Chelsea playing out around the back still. And you could just sense the frustration from the crowd. It's like, what are you doing? But I think this reminds me of a little bit of, if you remember Ange in that game against Liverpool, when they went down to 9 men, and he was absolutely adamant that regardless of the situation, you won?
Of Chelsea.
Against Chelsea, even. Sorry, not Liverpool. Yeah. Against Chelsea, and they were absolutely adamant that they were going to keep that ridiculous high line, irrespective of the cost, in terms of the score line. And you do see it with other managers at times, but I think it's about trying to reinforce that is how he wants to play, regardless of the situation. And I think Ange was similar at the time, that regardless of the situation, we want to be playing like this. Obviously, passing the ball around the back in the 95th minute when you're losing the game isn't ideal, and it looks a bit ridiculous. But I think it's more a sort of just an instruction from him in terms of the belief as to how he wants to play. And playing out from the back is interesting because Emery does it at Villa, and it is scary at times. You're inviting the other team on, and unless you're really competent at doing it, when you make mistakes, it gets very ugly very quickly. And it will take some time for those Chelsea players to get used to it. Their centre-backs have shown no inclination to be able to do it properly. Sanchez is always a liability. So it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of pans out, because Brentford will have had a week to prepare for this game. I think Chelsea are in for a long Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Caicedo's back though, so it's big for them.
Yeah, but Chelsea have been poor at home in these types of games.
Yeah, they have been really poor, yeah. And as you say, it was a tough game on Wednesday night mentally as well. And they're going to back it up.
The thing to look out for in that game, set pieces. Chelsea as bad as anyone in the league. Brentford as good as anyone in the league, not called Arsenal. That would be something to look for, I think. What else is there? Obviously, conscious we're miles over time-wise, but we've got this far. Let's keep going. Villa-Everton. Everton, so I was quite happy to see Senegal progress on Wednesday, because it means that Gueye and Ndiaye are missing for Everton. This Everton team, whilst missing some of these players, Dewsbury Hall have looked really poor. Moyes will probably come and try and park the bus. I'm quietly confident about Villa's chances in this game. I know that normally ends in disaster, but given Villa's record at Villa Park, no reason to think that they shouldn't go very well. And honestly, when I look at the prices, would I rather back Villa to beat Everton or Newcastle to win at Wolves? I think I'll take Villa to beat Everton, thanks. And the same with, Chelsea, Brentford. I'll take Villa to beat Everton over Chelsea beating Brentford, to be honest. I think it's always quite an interesting way to look at it, just so you can sort of see relative prices. What else is there?
Yeah, having a week off for Villa is huge, actually, this stage of the season. Just having that spare week where you can do very little training, get players back to 100% fit, work and a couple of things without having the stress of the travel that's a nice little break there for Aston Villa kind of thing. With another back-to-back games now until the next 6 weeks or so, essentially, yeah.
So Sunderland Palace could be interesting. I think Palace have just hit a brick wall, and we've touched on it before. Sunderland's obviously not going to be an easy place to go. Sunderland get some of their AFCON boys back. Obviously, I think Traore is out with a knee injury. But
Dingler can play there.
It's not. I didn't say they didn't have options, but
yeah, I'm just saying it's not.
Yeah, I think that's not going to be an easy game for Palace. They're generally more suited to playing away from these sorts of games. I think they'll sit back and let Sunderland try and come on to them. I'm not sure it suits Sunderland much in that respect, but I think Palace is struggling big time at the moment. So, those injuries are catching up with them. And then what else?
Fancy Sunderland in that game, actually. I think it's a hard place to go for Sunderland. It really is. It's they've got the AFCON bows back.
Obviously, you boys should beat Burnley handsomely. Surely.
Wait.
Surely.
I don't know.
No, you will.
God.
You have to be beating Burnley handsomely. Leeds Fulham's quite an interesting game.
Yes and no. It's another.
Well, only as much as Fulham have obviously had some great results recently, but I'm not convinced they're that great. And then, I've seen Leeds have also had some great results, and sometimes they're just a little bit inconsistent in terms of how they play. They've had a couple of injuries that caused them a couple of issues, like Rodon missing, and although was that suspension? I can't remember.
They've got that Chelsea lad, haven't they? The Argentinian lad, they've got him on loan as well.
Buonanete from Brighton.
Yeah, so he'll definitely be in the squad. I can't imagine him starting, but yeah. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, again, he's on a roll at the moment. He'll cause Anderson for them a lot of trouble there.
Well, I'd be interested to see if Bassey's back. So, obviously, Nigeria lost on penalties. No?
Third and fourth playoff.
Oh, of course, yeah. I forget they have to go through.
So, AFCON finals Sunday night, 7:00 between Morocco and Senegal, because Senegal beat Egypt on Wednesday night. Sadio Mane in the Liverpool derby beat Mo Salah's Egypt. Egypt are a really bad side. Barring Mamouche and Mo Salah. There's only one other player plays in European football. The rest of them play locally, or it's not a very good Egypt team. And then the third and fourth playoff, obviously, Saturday. So that's why some of the players who are involved in the semi-finals can't play this weekend either. So AFCON final, it's on Channel 4 here in the UK. Again, both semi-finals were pretty dire, to be honest with you. Too much at stake. Teams don't want to concede because they know how hard it actually is to score a goal. A lot easier to defend when you've got lesser players and worse players. Expect probably a penalty shootout, which is always good fun to watch. Some of those penalties the other day were pretty poor in the second semi-final. So that's AFCON. Other European games, Serie A continues. Napoli had a draw the weekend. They won at week. They did draw at the weekend. They drew midweek as well. Inter won in the midweek. AC Milan beat Como 3-1 last night. Cesc Fabregas is Como. So now it's into 3 points clear, I think, of AC Milan. They both play Saturday. AC Milan plays Sunday, obviously. Bundesliga, Munich, their plus 53 goal difference it is. They play Leipzig on Saturday as well. Along with that, Leonard Marl, the young midfielder, attacking midfielder, there's a lad at the back who's getting some rave reviews. Apparently, that a couple of Premier League players were interested. Not seen him play. Casino Chiara. He's a right-sided centre-back or right-back. 17-year-old kid that a couple of teams were interested in. I think he's out of contract this summer. It's a noise. And there's a couple of bigger teams that are interested in him. Now, Liga's obviously playing this weekend. Madrid against Levante. And Sociedad are hosting Barcelona Sunday night. And it's a Scottish Cup fourth round, so there's no Premier League. Hearts obviously won in midweek with 10 men, and Celtic won again under Martin O'Neill. So can they go back and, as we said, erase those 33 days under Nancy? They must be fuming, absolutely fuming.
Ridiculous. But it's obviously a lot of sport going on at the moment. As I say, I'm conscious that time-wise, this is obviously significantly longer than any other podcast we've done. We'll have a think in terms of going forward as to whether slightly longer is better, obviously shorter, how we do about it. We're still trying to find our feet a little bit. I would say if you have made it through this far,
thank you.
Thank you. But it'll help us if you do like, subscribe, all the usual stuff.
We do also I do the topics, I do the timestamp. So if you're only interested in certain sports or certain previews, I do that. That's on the YouTube channel. It's also on Spotify and Apple. So if you only want to go to certain parts of the pod, it's in the description, which might help people.
Right, James. I think that's it. And enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, I'm going for a lie down. Enjoy your weekend all. Speak to you soon.
Cheers.
Bye bye.